Welcome to Health News and Views, a podcast dedicated to bringing some clarity to the health disparities in the Black and Brown communities. If you believe there's a connection between food, sickness, and health, then you're in the right place. Let's begin the process of unraveling the truth. And now, your host, Lynn Pete.
Well, greetings and welcome back to Health News and Views, Food's Final Frontier for part 2 of Meet Me at the Market. Well, in the last episode, meat production and its ethical and environmental impact was discussed. Well, in this episode, manufactured alternatives will be the focus. But first, the subject matter provided in this podcast or any of our published documents is for informational purposes only. Food, the Final Frontier, and our partner, Health News and Views, we do not attempt to treat, diagnose, or cure any disease or condition. Always check with your healthcare provider before making any lifestyle, dietary, or prescription drug changes. And now as a recap. While meat production has been associated with environmental degradation, at the same time, many countries are increasing their consumption. Well, world meat consumption has quadrupled since 1961. So says the NIH, National Institute of Health. The growing human population has encouraged the expansion of livestock, with 80 billion animals slaughtered annually to produce 340 million tons of meat for human consumption. It's increasingly recognized that livestock has a major impact on ecosystems worldwide, which is why meat produces only 18% of the global food supply. However, the livestock currently uses 87% of all the agricultural land. Crops such as corn, soy, and wheat are not for human consumption, but they are produced for livestock. And that information comes from PETA, the animal rights organization. Well, what are the alternatives? Plant-based or cultivated or lab meat? Well, those are the two alternatives that we have right now. And why do people look for alternatives? They want a healthier option. Plant-based meats are generally lower in saturated fats and cholesterol. Environmental benefits. Producing plant-based meats typically has a lower carbon footprint and requires less water and land, and compared to traditional meat production, contributing to our environmental impact. Animal welfare, they're concerned about that. There's ethical considerations, and many people choose plant-based meats over the traditional is because they want to reduce their contribution to negative impacts of the world. Well, people who opt out for plant-based or lab meat alternatives are probably the most conscientious among us. And the fact that cruelty-free, as they don't involve the raising of and slaughtering of animals, appealing to those concerned about animal welfare. However, in choosing either, there are considerations to be made. The ingredients in plant-based meats have proteins, and they're protein-based meats, and they use sources such as soy, pea protein, wheat, gluten, mung bean, and faba bean, and primarily the components that mimic the protein, that's found in animal meat. They also use fats and oils, coconut oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, even vegetable oils, just to replicate the juiciness and mouthfeel of an animal fat. There's binders and fillers to be concerned about. Starches, gums that are being used, and that can include things like potato starch and cellulose and tapioca starch. Cellulose, by the way, is oftentimes considered as wood sawdust. Flavorings and seasonings, natural and artificial, just to mimic the flavor and profile of meat. But what about these lab meats? Well, there's 2 companies that have been given the go-ahead to produce this lab meat. And just know the investors are out there and ready to hand over the ducats to make this happen. So lab meat is not a GMO, by the way, and it is bioengineered via cell extractions. And what they do is they pull cells from live animals, plus the growth mediums they use from these extractions to grow muscle fiber. And that's what meat is. Meat is a muscle. That's what we're eating. Chemicals are added, resulting in muscle fibers that will mimic conventional meat. Well, the production process requires a heavy use of antibiotics. There's a concern about diseases that can spread throughout a facility or into the product during even the production process. The environmental impact says that lab-grown meat may be up to 25 more times worse for the environment than natural pasteurized or pasture-raised cattle. In a 134-page document from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the World Health Organization, they have indicated, based on extensive scientific literature, and they aim to share the current state and knowledge with relevant stakeholders and inform consumers about this food safety aspects of cell-based foods. Particular attention should be paid to, according to the article, the mechanisms of cell proliferation in bioreactors using a biological component, such as a growth factor and hormones from animal serum or even non-animal origin, to trigger and accelerate cell cultivation. Well, these biological active molecules could interfere with the metabolism or have been linked to the development of certain cancers. And therefore, these products potentially have carcinogenic effects and particularly could cause some serious human health issues. Okay. Extreme caution is needed as there is still too little information and insufficient data on the actual safety of lab-grown meat. This article was written in April 2023. And let's ponder a few thoughts. The meat and poultry are great sources of protein, and they provide lots of other nutrients the body needs, like iodine and iron, zinc, vitamins, especially B12, and essential fatty acids. Yet, red meats and processed meats are also reported to be the cause of obesity, diabetes, cancer, and more. Now, if you're confounded by the ambiguity of the science and the claims from the profit-driven food industry and its investors, please, I get it. Meat is needed in the diet, less carbs and plants. Okay. But no, meat is the cause of chronic diseases. Well, traditional and plant-based or lab meat, which is it? The final decision is yours. Do your research. Check it out before you decide to do the consumption. And by the way, there's a proverb of other countries, Africans, Asians. Meat is for special occasions. Meat and sweets are special occasions, and that's how they've always used it. So meat is not the focal point of the meal. One thing is certain, and two things for sure. Animals that eat meat, I'm talking about true carnivores, they don't cook the meat, and they don't eat it 3 times a day. I wish I had more to say on the topic. Your comments are welcome. What say you? Let's make this a powerful day anyway. Do come back. I need to hear from you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Health News and Views. Join us again next time as we continue to explore the correlation between food, sickness, and health. If you like the show, please subscribe and leave a review for Lynn. She would love to hear your comments. Thanks again for listening, and remember, food is the final frontier.